Benjamin Franklin famously quoted, "In this world, nothing is certain but death and taxes." As a whole, we want another certainty, that death is not an end. So why must we fear it? In my paper, I argue that in Emily Dickinson's poem, "Because I Could Not Stop for Death," it is her mere perspective on death to not fear the inevitable, but to embrace it instead. And she does just that, as if she is about to meet a long-lost love with whom she cannot wait to see. The first paragraph begins, "Because I could not stop for death, he kindly stopped for me. The carriage held but just ourselves and immortality. He is a personification of death, in which they first meet and begin their journey together." In the second paragraph, the author, or Emily, talks as if she's on a Sunday stroll with her love, and without a care or worry to the day. The paragraph goes, quote, "We slowly drove, he knew no haste, and I had put away my labor and my leisure too, for his civility." It is easy to sense that Emily is not hurried nor anxious, but very content and relaxed in his company, and rather warmed by her escort's gracious hospitality. So they continue the journey. On their way, they pass schools and children, fields of gazing grain, and pass the setting sun. All that they see are symbols of her life. The schools and children representing her early life or childhood. The fields of gazing grain could symbolize her growth into adulthood or maturity. And finally, the setting sun, representing her last years. In the last few paragraphs, they come to her grave. The poem continues, quote, "We paused before a house that seemed a swelling of the ground. The roof was scarcely visible, the cornice but a mound. Since then, 'tis centuries, and yet feels shorter than the day I first surmised the horses' heads were toward eternity." To summarize the last two paragraphs, when she sees her grave, she refers to it as her house. A house is home, and home is where we feel the most comfortable. This is clearly an indication she is comfortable with death. Although centuries have come and gone, it doesn't seem so. It is then Emily realizes the horses that had picked her up in the carriage were taking her to her final destination. Emily Dickinson was born in 1830, an era of transcendentalism. The purpose of this era was not about material things, but of finding the truth within yourself. Many considered her a transcendentalist. Emily Dickinson did not follow a crowd. She was very introverted and lived a very reclusive life. She was troubled from a very young age by the death of those she was closest to. Later, she had lost even more close friends and withdrew even further from the outside world. This, however, proved to be a very productive writing time for Dickinson. Many of her poems deal with themes of death and immortality. This poem I've read concludes my argument that Emily's perspective of death was not to be afraid or to fear death, but simply to just embrace it, for death is a mere piece of who we are.